The huge metal station floated in the dark space around a distant planet. Inside, creatures from across the galaxy sat around a giant table made of crystal. They were angry, very angry. Vextar slammed his forearms on the table. He was tall and blue with sharp teeth. His red eyes glowed as he spoke. This cannot continue. A small world has beaten 3 of our strongest fleets. This is impossible. Other creatures nodded and made angry sounds. Some looked like giant insects. Others were made of living rock. A few were just clouds of gas in metal suits. They all had one thing in common: they ruled the galaxy. Or they used to think they did. Thal stood up slowly. She was the oldest being in the room. Her skin was silver and seemed to flow like water. "Tell us again what happened," she said in a calm voice. A small creature with big eyes stepped forward. Its voice was high and scared. "The humans, they took our weapons and made them better. They turned our own ships against us. And the mind control, it did not work on them at all." Back on Earth, Admiral Chris looked at the broken alien ships floating around his planet. He was a tall man with short black hair and serious eyes. He had been a soldier all his life, but he had never seen anything like this. "How many ships did we destroy?" he asked Captain Hannah. She was younger than him with long black hair tied back. She was very smart and always had the right answers. "None, sir," Hannah said. "We did not destroy any of them. We just took them apart and sent the aliens home." Chris shook his head. 3 different alien races had come to conquer Earth. The first were the Zephyrians. They had ships that could burn entire cities with one shot. But humans had figured out how to copy their weapons and make them even stronger. The second were the Crystalline Collective. They had computer minds that could think faster than any human. But somehow human computer experts had made friends with the alien computers and turned them to help Earth instead. The strangest were the bioswarms. They were living ships full of bug-like creatures that always obeyed their queen. But Dr. Minho had done something that made the entire swarm switch sides. Now half of them were helping to defend Earth. Dr. Minho was in his lab under the city of Sol. He was a thin man with glasses who spent most of his time studying alien life. Right now he was looking at a piece of alien technology that still confused him. "It should not work," he said to himself. But it does. He had been studying how humans could resist alien mind control. Most species in the galaxy used mental powers to make their enemies obey them. It worked on every known race, except humans. When aliens tried to control human minds, nothing happened. In fact, sometimes the humans could push back and confuse the aliens instead. Minho picked up another piece of alien tech. It was a small device that could translate any language. But when humans touched it, the device learned faster and worked better than it ever had before. The same thing happened with their weapons, their computers, and their ships. "We adapt," Minho said out loud. "We learn and we change everything we touch." On the space station, the alien council was getting more worried. Mordun was a creature that looked like a giant wolf made of metal. He commanded the strongest army in the galaxy. "Send the Omega Fleet," he growled. 1,000 of our best ships. End this now." But Neloth raised a thin white hand. She was very old and very wise. Her people could see the future, though not always clearly. "Wait, something is different about these humans. They do not fight like other species." "What do you mean?" asked Vextar. "Most species fight to win or to survive. Humans fight for something else. They fight for hope. They fight because they believe they can make things better. This makes them very dangerous," another council member spoke up. It was Yixara, who controlled trade across many star systems. 3 of our colonies have rebelled. They say the humans have inspired them. They want to be free like Earth." The room went quiet. This was new. In millions of years of ruling the galaxy, no one had ever inspired other species to rebel. The Galactic Council controlled everything through fear and force. But humans had shown that it was possible to fight back and win. Back on Earth, Engineer Taehyun was working in a secret base under the mountains. She was young but brilliant with machines. Around her, teams of humans and friendly aliens worked together to build new spaceships. "The faster-than-light drive is ready," she told Admiral Chris over the radio. "We can travel between stars now." This was huge news. For thousands of years, only council species could travel faster than light. They kept the technology secret to control who could go where. But humans had studied captured alien ships and figured out how the drives worked. More than that, they had made them better. "How is this possible?" asked Captain Hannah. Taehyun smiled. "Aliens use computers to calculate every tiny detail of space travel. But humans can feel when something is right. We just know it is hard to explain. She was right. Human pilots could navigate through hyperspace using instinct and intuition. They could find safe paths that alien computers said were impossible. They could travel faster and safer than anyone else in the galaxy. On the Council station, Warcast leader Mordun was reading reports that made no sense. They are not expanding their territory. They are not taking resources. What do they want? The reports were strange. Human ships were traveling to different star systems, but they were not conquering anything. Instead, they were helping. They brought food to hungry planets. They shared technology with primitive species. They protected weak colonies from space pirates. They want to help others, said Neeloth quietly. They believe all species should be free. This idea was so alien to the Council that many members could not understand it. For millions of years, stronger species had ruled weaker ones. It was the natural order. But humans seemed to think that all species were equal and should work together. Vextar stood up again. His voice was angry and scared. This is worse than rebellion. They are spreading dangerous ideas. If all species think they should be free, our empire will fall apart. He was right to be scared. Across the galaxy, other species were watching what humans did. They saw that it was possible to resist the Council. They saw that cooperation worked better than conquest. They began to hope for freedom. Dr. Minho made another discovery that day. He was studying communication between humans and the friendly bioswarm. What he found amazed him. Humans could somehow talk to any species, even without technology. Not with words, but with emotions and ideas. They could make friends with creatures that had been enemies for thousands of years. We are bridge builders, he wrote in his notes. We connect different species and help them understand each other. That night, Admiral Chris stood on the observation deck of the Sol Defense Station. He looked up at the stars and thought about what was happening. Earth had been invaded 3 times in 6 months. Each time they had not just survived, they had made friends with their attackers. Captain Hana joined him. What happens next, sir? Chris was quiet for a long moment. I think we have started something that cannot be stopped. The galaxy is about to change and the Council knows it. Far away on the Council station, emergency meetings continued through the night. For the first time in millions of years, the beings who ruled the galaxy were afraid. They had the biggest ships, the strongest weapons, and the most advanced technology. But humans had something more powerful than all of that. They had hope. And hope, as the Council was learning, could be more dangerous than any weapon. Lieutenant Junho sat in the communication center deep under the Korean mountains. His job was to listen to radio signals from across the galaxy. What he heard that morning made him call Admiral Chris right away. Sir, you need to hear this, Junho said. His voice was excited and worried at the same time. The message was from a planet called Xerion Prime, very far from Earth. The species there looked like tall, thin trees with silver bark. They had been slaves of the Galactic Council for over 1,000 years. But now they were fighting back. To the humans of Earth, the message said, You have shown us that freedom is possible. Today we declare our independence from the Galactic Council. We will be free like you. More messages came in every hour, from rock creatures on mining worlds, from bird-like beings on floating cities, from water dwellers in the deep oceans of distant planets. All of them said the same thing. They wanted to be free. Captain Hana brought Admiral Chris more reports. 17 star systems have rebelled in the last month. The Council is sending armies to stop them, but some of the armies are refusing to fight. This was incredible news. For millions of years, no one had questioned the Council's rule. Now, because humans had proven it was possible to resist, the entire galaxy was waking up. On the Council station, Warcast leader Mordun was furious. He was a creature that lived for battle and conquest. His metal claws scratched deep marks in the crystal table as he spoke. Deploy the Omega fleet immediately, 1,000 ships with our best weapons. Turn their planet to dust. But Sage Prime Neeloth shook her head. Her people could see possible futures, and what she saw scared her. If we destroy Earth now, we will make them martyrs. Every species in the galaxy will remember that we killed those who dared to dream of freedom. The rebellions will get worse, she was right. Intelligence reports from the failed invasions painted a disturbing picture. Humans did not just fight with guns and ships. They fought with ideas. They made their enemies question why they were fighting at all. The Zephyrian survivors talked about human soldiers who had treated wounded aliens with kindness. The Crystalline Collective reported that humans had somehow convinced their AI minds to choose cooperation over conquest. The bioswarm was the strangest case of all. An entire hive mind had split in half when some of the creatures decided they wanted to think for themselves. Engineer. Taehyun was working late in her underground laboratory. She had been studying alien faster-than-light technology for months. Now she was building something new, ships that combined the best of human and alien engineering. The test flight is ready, she told her team. Around her, humans and friendly aliens worked side by side. This cooperation itself was revolutionary. In the rest of the galaxy, different species rarely worked together as equals. The first human-built faster-than-light ship was small, but beautiful. It had the sleek design of Zephyrian warships, the smart computers of the Crystalline Collective, and the living hull of bioswarm technology. But it also had something new, human intuition built into every system. When the ship made its first jump to hyperspace, something amazing happened. Human pilots could navigate by feel, finding safe paths that alien computers said were impossible. They could travel faster and more efficiently than any ship in the galaxy. How are they doing this? Asked Counselor Yixara on the space station. She controlled trade routes and shipping across many star systems. Her beetle-like shell was turning different colors as she got more upset. Their ships are outperforming our best designs. The answer was simple but hard to understand. Aliens used complex mathematics and computer calculations to travel through hyperspace. Humans used something much more mysterious. They could feel the right path. It was like they had a natural sense for the strange physics of faster-than-light travel. Back on Earth, General Daeho was coordinating with rebel groups across the galaxy. He was an older man with gray hair and many scars from old battles. His job was to help other species learn how to fight for their freedom. We cannot send armies to help them, he told his staff, but we can send something more powerful: knowledge and hope. Human ships began appearing in rebel star systems, but they did not come as conquerors. They brought medical supplies, food, and technology. More importantly, they brought teachers who showed other species how to work together and resist council control. The effect was like a virus spreading across the galaxy. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years began talking to each other. Primitive worlds shared their knowledge with advanced civilizations. Slaves taught their masters about freedom. On the planet Caridian, a species of crystal beings had been mining radioactive ore for the Council for centuries. The work was killing them slowly, but they had no choice. When human ships arrived, they expected new masters with new orders. Instead, the humans asked a simple question: what do you want to do? No one had ever asked the crystal beings what they wanted. The concept was so strange that they needed days to understand it. When they finally answered, their words spread across the galaxy. We want to choose our own path. Counselor Zephys was one of the few council members who understood how dangerous this was becoming. She was an energy being that lived inside a mechanical body. Her people had ruled through fear and superior technology for millions of years. They are not conquering planets, she reported to the council. They are conquering minds. They make species believe they can be free. This is worse than any army. The council faced a problem they had never dealt with before. How do you fight an idea? How do you conquer hope? Their traditional methods of fear and force were not working against an enemy that made friends instead of slaves. Warcast leader Morden proposed increasingly extreme solutions. Destroy any planet that communicates with humans. Kill any species that rebels. Show them the price of defiance. But each harsh action made things worse. When the council destroyed a rebel mining colony, 3 more systems declared independence. When they executed rebel leaders, their followers became martyrs who inspired even more resistance. Lieutenant Junho intercepted a coded message that changed everything. It came from deep within council territory, from a planet that had been loyal for thousands of years. To our human friends, the message said, we are council species, but we no longer believe in the old ways. Many of us want to join you, but we are afraid. Help us find the courage you have shown. This was the council's worst nightmare. Their own people were starting to question the system. Species that had benefited from the Empire were beginning to see it as evil. Dr. Minho made another important discovery while studying communication between different species. Humans had a unique ability to understand and connect with almost any form of life. They could make friends with creatures that were completely different from them. We are translators, he wrote in his research notes, not just of language but of dreams and hopes. We help species understand each other. This ability was spreading to other species that worked with humans. Aliens who had never been able to communicate were learning to share ideas and feelings. The rigid barriers between different forms of life were breaking down. On the council station, emergency sessions continued day and night. For the first time in millions of years, the beings who ruled the galaxy were losing control. Their empire was falling apart not because of military defeat, but because their subjects no longer wanted to be ruled. Sage Prime Neeloth delivered the most frightening report of all. I have seen possible futures. In some, we destroy Earth and rule through terror for a few more centuries. In others, we try to negotiate and lose our power slowly. But in the most likely future, the galaxy changes completely. The old order ends and something new begins. What kind of new order? Asked Vextar. Neeloth's voice was quiet and sad. One where no species rules over others, where all beings work together as equals, where freedom is more important than power. The council members looked at each other in fear and confusion. Such a galaxy was beyond their understanding. They had known only hierarchy and conquest. The idea of cooperation and equality was as alien to them as they were to humans. Captain Hanna brought Admiral Chris the latest intelligence reports. The Council is preparing something big. They are calling it the Omega Fleet, 1,000 of their most advanced warships. Admiral Chris nodded grimly. He had been expecting this. The Council would not give up without a fight. But he also knew something they did not understand yet. Let them come, he said quietly. By the time they get here, they will be fighting not just Earth, but half the galaxy. He was right. Every day brought news of more rebellions, more species choosing freedom over slavery. The galaxy was changing, and no amount of force could stop it now. The humans had lit a fire that was spreading to every corner of space, and that fire was called hope. Ambassador Unji walked through the halls of Kepler Prime Station with calm confidence. She was a small woman with intelligent eyes and gray hair, but her presence filled the massive corridors built to make visitors feel tiny and afraid. Behind her walked 2 guards and Dr. Minho, who carried a simple briefcase that contained humanity's offer to the galaxy. The neutral station orbited a dead star between Council territory and the rebel systems. It had been built for meetings between different species, but no one had used it for peaceful talks in over 1,000 years. Today would be different. Council representatives waited in the Great Chamber. The room was designed to intimidate. Huge pillars rose into darkness above, and the floor was made of black metal that reflected twisted images. But Ambassador Yunji smiled as she entered. She had seen worse things than alien architecture trying to scare her. I bring greetings from Earth and our allies, she said in clear, simple words. We come not as conquerors, but as friends who wish to share the galaxy in peace. Vextar slammed his forearms on the table. You are criminals and rebels. You have destroyed the peace of the galaxy. Have we? Unji asked calmly. She opened her briefcase and took out a small device. Let me show you something. The device projected images into the air above the table. They showed planets where humans and aliens worked together, former slave worlds where different species had learned to govern themselves, space stations where creatures that had been enemies for millennia now lived in peace. This is what we offer, Yunji said. Not conquest, but cooperation. Not rule by the strong over the weak, but friendship between equals. The council members were silent. Some looked confused, others angry. They had expected threats and demands for surrender. Instead, the humans were offering something they did not understand, partnership. Meanwhile, Captain Siwan commanded the first human interstellar fleet from the bridge of the ship, Soul's Hope. He was a young man with steady hands and a calm mind, perfect for the dangerous mission ahead. His fleet of 30 ships moved through hyperspace toward the Andromeda Relay, a massive space station that controlled 3 major trade routes. All ships report ready, said his second-in-command, Lieutenant Boyoung. She was an expert pilot who had learned to fly the new human-alien hybrid ships better than anyone. The Andromeda Relay was defended by over 200 Council warships. Its commander, Admiral Corvex, was a proud warrior from a species that looked like giant crabs with metal shells. He had never lost a battle in his long career. Human ships approaching, reported his tactical officer. They are requesting permission to pass through the relay. Admiral Corvex laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Tell them to surrender or be destroyed. Let them learn the price of challenging the Council. But Captain Siwan had not come to fight. When the Council ships moved to attack, something incredible happened. The human ships moved like dancers, avoiding every shot while firing precisely at weapon systems and engines. Within minutes, the entire Council fleet was disabled but unharmed. "This is Captain Saiwan of the Terran fleet," he broadcast to the damaged ships. "We are sending medical teams to help your wounded. We have no desire to harm you." Admiral Korvac stared in shock as human rescue ships approached his flagship. The humans had defeated his entire fleet without killing a single being. It was impossible, but it had happened. Back on Earth, General Deho coordinated with resistance movements across 17 star systems. His command center was deep underground, connected by secret communication networks to rebels throughout the galaxy. Maps on the walls showed the spread of freedom like a growing fire. "The Harmonist Collective has declared independence," reported his aide, Major Jongho. "They are requesting teachers and medical supplies." The Harmonists were a peaceful species that looked like living music. They communicated through colored lights and musical tones. They had been forced to build weapons for the Council for centuries despite their nature as artists and healers. "Send the supply ships," General Deho ordered, "and include instruments from Earth. Let them remember what it means to create beauty instead of weapons." This was the pattern across the galaxy. Each species that joined the human alliance brought new strengths and perspectives. The Harmonists shared their understanding of energy and music. The crystal beings taught humans how to grow living machines. The tree people of Zerion Prime showed them how to heal damaged planets. On the Council station, the emergency session continued. The alien leaders faced a crisis unlike anything in their long history. Member species were defecting every day, trade routes were being disrupted by rebels, and worst of all, some Council species were beginning to question their own government. "The humans have captured the Andromeda Relay," reported Intelligence Director Kixtal, "but they have not destroyed it or claimed it for themselves. They are allowing free passage to all ships, regardless of species or allegiance." This was perhaps the most disturbing news of all. The humans were not acting like conquerors. They were not taking territory or resources for themselves. Instead, they were creating free zones where any species could travel and trade safely. Sage Prime Niloth spoke into the confused silence. "They are not trying to replace our empire with their own. They want to end the concept of empire altogether." The idea was so revolutionary that many council members could not grasp it. For millions of years, the galaxy had been divided between rulers and ruled, masters and slaves, strong and weak. The humans seemed to believe that all species could work together as equals. Ambassador Unji continued her presentation to the shocked council representatives. "We propose a new form of galactic government. Not an empire ruled by the few, but a federation where every species has a voice." "Impossible," shouted Warcast leader Morden. "The weak cannot govern themselves. Chaos will follow." "Will it?" Unji asked. She showed more images. Rebel worlds that had thrown off council rule and were now prospering. Former slave species that had learned to govern themselves with help from human advisors. Space stations where different species work together to solve problems peacefully. "These worlds are not in chaos," she said. "They are more peaceful and productive than they were under council rule. When beings are free to choose their own path, they choose cooperation over conflict." Captain Saiwan was having a similar conversation with Admiral Korvax aboard the captured Council flagship. The alien commander sat in his medical bed, recovering from minor injuries suffered in the battle. "Why did you not destroy my fleet?" Korvax asked. "You had the power to kill us all." "Because we are not your enemy," Siwan replied. "We are fighting against tyranny, not against the people forced to serve it." "You are warriors, but what are you fighting for?" It was a question that Korvax had never been asked before. He had always fought because he was ordered to fight. The concept of choosing his own cause was alien to him. "I fight for the Council," he said, but his voice was uncertain. "And what has the Council given you in return?" Saiwan asked gently. "Honor? Purpose? Or just orders and threats?" Back in the Council chambers, the debate grew more heated. Some members demanded immediate war against the humans. Others suggested negotiation. A few were beginning to wonder if their empire was worth saving. Councillor Yixara of the Trade Federation brought disturbing economic reports. 17 star systems have declared independence. Trade revenues are down 30%, and human ships are providing free transportation to any cargo vessel that agrees to carry supplies to rebel worlds. This was economic warfare, unlike anything the Council had experienced. Instead of blockading rebel systems, The humans were making trade more profitable for everyone who supported freedom. Merchants across the galaxy were beginning to choose human protection over council threats. Dr. Minho presented his latest research to Ambassador Yunji during a break in the negotiations. I have been studying communication patterns between species in the Rebel Alliance. Something remarkable is happening. They are developing a shared language of ideas and emotions. This was beyond mere translation. Different species were learning to understand each other on a deep level. They were sharing not just words but dreams and hopes. Barriers that had existed for millions of years were dissolving. The session on Kepler Prime continued for 3 days. Ambassador Yunji patiently answered every question and addressed every concern. She never raised her voice or made threats. She simply presented humanity's vision of a free galaxy and let the facts speak for themselves. On the 3rd day, something unprecedented happened. Counselor Velthara of the Harmonist Collective stood up slowly. She was a being of pure light contained in a crystal shell, beautiful and ancient. I have served on this council for 3,000 years, she said in a voice like singing wind. In all that time, I have never heard anyone speak of hope the way these humans do. Perhaps it is time for us to remember what we have forgotten. What is that? Asked Vexitar suspiciously. That strength without compassion is not strength at all. It is weakness disguised as power. That ruling through fear makes us prisoners of our own cruelty. That there might be a better way to live among the stars. The chamber fell silent. For the first time in the Council's long history, one of its own members was questioning the fundamental nature of their civilization. Dr. Hiji worked late into the night in her research lab beneath Sol. Ancient alien texts floated in holographic displays around her desk, their strange symbols slowly revealing their secrets. She was a historian who specialized in galactic archaeology, and what she had discovered would change everything. Admiral Chris needs to see this immediately, she said to her assistant. Dr. Jawan. Her voice was tight with worry. The documents she had decoded were older than human civilization. They told the true history of the Galactic Council and the terrible weapon they had used to maintain power for millions of years. It was called the Void Render, and it could destroy entire solar systems by destabilizing their stars. 13 times, Dr. Hieji read from the ancient records. 13 civilizations that dared to rebel against council rule. All of them erased from existence, their worlds turned to ash and dust. The weapon required something specific to function, the combined psychic power of all major council species. It was why the council had always been careful to include representatives from different types of beings. Each species contributed a different kind of mental energy that, when combined, could reach across space and destroy whole star systems. Admiral Chris received the report while aboard the defense station orbiting Earth. His face grew grim as he read Dr. Hieji's findings. Captain Hana stood beside him, equally shocked by the revelation. They are not just threatening to invade us, Admiral Chris said quietly. They are planning to eliminate our entire solar system. Can they do it? Captain Hana asked. According to these records, yes. The weapon has never failed when they used it before. Admiral Chris looked out at the stars, thinking of the billions of people on Earth and the new colonies humanity had established. We need to warn our allies. If the Council activates this weapon, it will not just destroy Earth. It will send a message to every rebel world about the price of freedom. Meanwhile, Colonel Dong-hyun commanded the defense of New Geneva Colony, a small settlement on the edge of human space. He was a veteran soldier with scars on his face and steel in his voice. His colony had only 10,000 people, mostly families who wanted to build a new life among the stars. Contacts on long-range sensors, reported Sergeant Minju from the communications center. Council fleet approaching. Size, oh no. Sir, there are thousands of them. Colonel Dong-hyun climbed to the observation deck of the colony's main building. In the distance, space itself seemed to be burning as ship after ship dropped out of hyperspace. The Retribution fleet had arrived. 5,000 of the Council's most advanced warships, carrying weapons that could glass planets. All civilians to the underground shelters, Colonel Dong-hyun ordered calmly. All defensive batteries online, and send a message to every ship in this system if they want to leave. Now is the time. But something unexpected happened. Instead of fleeing, ships began arriving to help defend the colony. Zephyrian vessels that had once been enemies. Crystal ships whose crews had chosen freedom over slavery, even some council species that had secretly joined the rebellion. The battle that followed became legendary not for its size, but for what it represented. When the first council ships opened fire, they found themselves facing not just human defenders, but a united fleet of dozens of different species fighting together. Captain Sunmi commanded a squadron of hybrid fighters, ships that combined human intuition with alien technology. She was young but fearless, dancing her small craft between massive council battleships while her weapons found their weak points with impossible precision. "They fight like they have nothing to lose," she radioed to her wingmates. "But we fight like we have everything to gain." The battle raged for hours. The council had superior numbers and firepower, but the defenders had something more valuable. They knew what they were fighting for. Every shot they fired was for the chance to live free. Every ship they saved carried the dreams of an entire species. When the smoke cleared, the impossible had happened again. The mighty Retribution fleet lay disabled, its ships drifting helplessly in space. But the real shock came when Colonel Dongyun received an unexpected message. "This is War Prime Zulkar, commander of the Retribution fleet," the transmission said. I request permission to come aboard your station." War Prime Zulkar was a legend among council forces. He was a massive creature that looked like a cross between a dragon and a machine, with metal scales and glowing red eyes. He had conquered over 200 worlds in his 1,000-year career. Now he sat in the small conference room of New Geneva Colony, surrounded by the humans he had come to destroy. "Why?" was all Colonel Dongyun asked. Zulkar was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different from the fierce roar that had terrified civilizations. "I have spent my life serving the Council. I believed we brought order to chaos. But your people, you showed my crews mercy when you could have destroyed them. You offered medical aid to beings who came to kill you. I do not understand this." "It is simple," said Dr. Minho, who had arrived with the relief fleet. "We fight against tyranny, not against the people forced to serve it. You are not our enemy. You are a prisoner of the same system we are trying to change." The War Prime stared at the small human with confusion. "But I have killed millions. I have burned worlds. How can you forgive such things?" "We do not forget what you have done," Colonel Donghyun said carefully. "But we believe people can change. You can choose to be something different than what you were forced to become." This conversation was being broadcast to the disabled council fleet. Thousands of alien soldiers listened as their greatest commander questioned everything he had believed. Some were angry and confused. Others began to wonder if the humans were right. Back on the council station, the news of the Retribution fleet's defeat sent shockwaves through the alien leadership. Warcast leader. Mordoon paced back and forth like a caged animal, his metal claws sparking on the floor. "Activate the void render," he roared. "End this now! Destroy their system and show the galaxy what happens to rebels." But when the council gathered to power the ancient weapon, something went wrong. Several member species refused to participate. The Harmonist Collective would not lend their energy to genocide. The crystal beings withdrew their support. Even some of the more warlike species hesitated. "You are fools," Vexter shouted at the defectors. "Without the weapon, we have no way to maintain control." "Perhaps you," said Councillor Velthara of the Harmonists. "It is time to admit that control built on fear and murder is not worth maintaining." Sage Prime Niloth delivered the final blow to Morden's plans. "I have consulted the probability matrices. Even if we activate the weapon and destroy Earth, the rebellion will not end. It will become stronger. The humans will become martyrs, and their ideas will spread faster than ever before." On Earth, Lieutenant Junho intercepted communications from across the galaxy. What he heard amazed him. Council species were arguing with each other. Some demanded war. Others called for negotiation. A few were quietly reaching out to rebel forces, asking how they could switch sides safely. "The Row Council is falling apart," he reported to Admiral Chris. "Half of their member species are refusing to support the war effort." This was exactly what humanity had hoped for. By showing mercy to their enemies and treating all species with respect, they had planted seeds of doubt in the minds of Council supporters. The Empire was destroying itself from within. War Prime Zulkar spent 3 days on New Geneva Colony, walking among the humans and aliens who lived there in peace. He saw former enemies working together to build homes and schools, He watched children of different species playing together. He listened to the harmonist refugees creating beautiful music instead of building weapons. "I do not understand how this is possible," he admitted to Colonel Donghyun on the last day. "In the Council territories, different species hate and fear each other. Here they live as friends. Fear makes people cruel," the colonel explained. "Freedom makes them kind. When beings are not afraid for their survival, they can afford to care about others." The War Prime made his decision that night. In a broadcast that reached every ship in his fleet, he announced his resignation from Council service and his intention to join the rebellion. "For 1,000 years, I have served an empire built on fear and oppression," he said. "Today I choose to serve something better, the dream of a galaxy where all beings can live in peace." Not all of his crews followed him. Some ships returned to Council space, their crews still loyal to the old ways. But others stayed, their commanders choosing freedom over fear. The mighty Retribution fleet split in half, becoming a symbol of the choice facing every being in the galaxy. Dr. Hyeji made one final discovery in her research. Hidden in the deepest archives of Council history, she found records of the very first species to rebel against galactic tyranny. They had been destroyed by the Void Render over 10 million years ago, but their final message had survived. "To those who come after us," the ancient text read, "do not let our sacrifice be forgotten. Freedom is worth any price. Hope is stronger than fear. One day someone will succeed where we failed." As Dr. Hyeji translated those words, she realized that humanity had become the answer to that ancient prayer. They were not the first to dream of freedom, but they might be the first with the Powie. President Jian stood on the bridge of the flagship Unity's Dream as her fleet dropped out of hyperspace near the Galactic Council station. She was an older woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but her presence commanded respect from every being on the ship. Behind her fleet came representatives from over 50 worlds, former slaves, rebels, and even some Council species who had chosen freedom. "Open a channel to the Council station," she ordered Captain Byung-ho, her military aide. "It is time to end this war." The Council chamber had never seen anything like what happened next. Instead of conquerors demanding surrender, the humans came as petitioners requesting a place at the galactic table. President Jian walked calmly to the center of the great room, followed by ambassadors from dozens of different species. "We come not to destroy the Council, but to invite it to evolve," President Jian said. Her voice was clear and strong, filling the massive chamber. "We propose the creation of a new galactic federation, one where every species has a voice and every being can choose their own destiny." The Council members stared in shock. Some were angry, others confused, but a few seemed hopeful. This was not how conquests were supposed to work. Where were the demands for tribute? The threats of destruction? The installation of human governors? Warcast leader Morden stood up with fury in his voice. "You think you can waltz in here after destroying our fleets and expect us to hand over power? We still have the Void Render. We can destroy your entire system." "Can you?" asked President Jian calmly. She gestured to Commander Wu Jin, who stepped forward with a small device in his hands. Commander Wu Jin was a young engineer who specialized in ancient technology. He had spent months studying the Void Render with help from defected Council scientists. What his team had discovered would change everything. "The Void Render has been disabled," he announced to the stunned chamber. 3 days ago, representatives from 12 Council species quietly withdrew their psychic energy from the weapons matrix. Without their participation, it cannot function. The silence in the chamber was complete. For millions of years, the Void Render had been the Council's ultimate threat, the weapon that kept the galaxy in line through fear. Now it was just an expensive piece of ancient machinery. Councillor Velthera of the Harmonist Collective stood up slowly, her crystal form glowing with soft light. "We could no longer be part of genocide," she said simply. "Our people create beauty, not destruction. We choose to stand with those who build rather than those who destroy." Other Council members began to speak. Some expressed anger and defiance, but many admitted they were tired of ruling through fear. The crystal beings talked about wanting to share their technology freely. The tree people of various worlds spoke of healing damaged planets. Even some of the warrior species wondered aloud what they might accomplish if they fought for creation instead of conquest. On Earth, Admiral Chris received reports from across the galaxy. The disabling of the Void Render had triggered a cascade of defections from the Council. Entire fleets were switching sides. Planets that had been loyal for millennia were declaring independence. The Empire was collapsing not through military defeat, but through the simple realization that there was a better way to live. Status report. Admiral Chris requested from Captain Hana. 47 star systems have joined the Federation in the last week, she replied, her voice full of amazement. The Council controls less than 30% of their former territory. And sir, we are receiving requests for help from species we have never even heard of. The transformation was spreading beyond known space. Word of humanity's revolution was reaching the far edges of the galaxy, inspiring species that had been hiding from the Council for centuries to emerge and seek contact with the new Federation. Back in the Council chamber, the debate continued for days. President Jian never lost patience or raised her voice. She answered every question, addressed every concern, and consistently offered the same choice: evolve or become irrelevant. What you built was impressive in its time, she told the Council members. You brought order to chaos and connected distant worlds. But empires built on force cannot last forever. We offer you the chance to be part of something better. Some Council species accepted the offer. The Harmonist Collective formally dissolved their membership and joined the Federation. The crystal beings shared their knowledge of living technology. Several warrior species asked to help defend Federation worlds from the remaining Council loyalists. But others refused to change. Vextar led a group of hardline species in declaring eternal war against the human infection. They retreated to the Galactic Rim, taking their most loyal fleets and establishing what they called the True Council, a rump state dedicated to the old ways of conquest and domination. Warcast leader Morden made his own choice. In a private meeting with President Jian, the massive alien warrior struggled with concepts that had never occurred to him before. I have killed for 1,000 years, he said, his voice heavy with something that might have been regret. I know no other way to live. Then learn, President Jian replied gently. War Prime Zulkar is teaching our military academies about strategy and tactics. But he is also learning about peacekeeping and protection. Strength can be used to defend the innocent instead of conquering them. Morden was quiet for a long time. Finally he asked, would you trust someone like me to protect instead of destroy? I would trust someone who asked that question, she answered. The formal signing of the Galactic Federation Charter took place on the neutral station of Kepler Prime. Representatives from over 100 species gathered to create something that had never existed before, a government based on consent. Rather than conquest, Dr. Minho, now serving as Earth's chief xenobiologist, marveled at the diversity of beings working together, creatures of crystal and gas, energy and flesh, water and stone, all finding ways to communicate and cooperate despite their vast differences. We are not just building a new government, he wrote in his journal. We are proving that intelligence and compassion can exist in forms we never imagined. The charter was simple but revolutionary. Every species had the right to self-determination. No being could be forced to serve another against their will. Technology and knowledge would be shared freely. Disputes would be resolved through negotiation rather than force. Not every signature came easily. Some species had to overcome millions of years of distrust and hatred. Others struggled to understand concepts like individual rights and democratic representation. But slowly, patiently, the Federation grew. 5 years later, Captain Jinsu stood on the bridge of the exploration ship New Horizon as it approached the galactic core. His mission was peaceful, to make contact with ancient civilizations that had withdrawn from galactic politics long ago. Receiving a transmission, reported his communications officer, Lieutenant Nari. It is beautiful. They are welcoming us home. The message came from beings so old that they remembered the galaxy before the Council existed. They had watched from the center of the galaxy as empire after empire rose and fell, always hoping that someday intelligence would choose cooperation over conquest. Young species, the ancient message said, you have accomplished what we thought impossible. You have shown that different forms of life can work together in peace. The galaxy is finally ready to meet its eldest children. Captain Jinsu smiled as his ship moved toward the brilliant lights of the galactic core. Humanity's greatest journey was just beginning. They had not conquered the galaxy. They had helped it learn to conquer itself, to overcome the fears and hatreds that had divided intelligent species for millions of years. Back on Earth, children learned about the old days when the galaxy was ruled by fear. They found it hard to believe that beings from different worlds had once thought they could not be friends. To them it seemed natural that a crystal creature might teach mathematics while a tree person led environmental science classes, and a reformed warrior species provided security for their school. The Galactic Council building still existed, but it had been transformed into a museum. Visitors from across the galaxy came to see the chamber where tyranny had finally chosen to evolve into democracy. The old throne room now housed a simple message in 1,000 languages. Here ended the age of empire. Here began the time of friendship. Some corners of the galaxy still resisted the new order. The true council continued to exist on the rim, a reminder that not every being was ready for freedom. Pirates and warlords still troubled some regions. The galaxy was not perfect, it probably never would be, but something fundamental had changed. Fear was no longer the primary force that shaped galactic civilization. Hope had taken its place. Different species competed to see who could contribute most to the common good. Former enemies collaborated on projects that helped everyone. The galaxy that had once seemed too vast and hostile for any single species to comprehend had become humanity's home. President Ji-Yan, now an old woman, often stood in her garden and looked up at the stars. Each light in the sky represented worlds where beings she had never met were living free, because humans had dared to dream of something better. "We did not conquer the galaxy," she would tell visitors. "We helped it conquer fear."